opinion-based are these results. So we employed text log again in subjectivity analysis, and when they're closer to zero, they mean like they're opinion-based and subjective, closer to when they're closer to one, opinion-based and subjective, and objective, and when they're closest to subjective, and when they're closer to zero, they're factual-based, more ground truth, and they're objective. And then we see here that the negative sentiments are closer to one, meaning they're more based on like personal perspectives and they're more subjective. While we see the neutral here being closer to zero, meaning they're more they're more laid with factual truths and they're more objective. And we see an interesting distribution here with the strongly positives and positive and how they spread between objective and subjective, and there's like a balance between that. So after that, we also wanted to know that since we understand the tones that we're getting in this data set, now we wanted to understand the topics that are being most discussed in this data set. So we employed topic modeling using by topic. We identified some key areas here like that were popping out through in our analysis, like education, career, election, and health. And we go into this much later. But after this, we wanted to also look at the types of emotions that were being invoked from these headlines. Using this to better, we saw the neutral taking the headlines. So we showed their examples here, all of jobs and the way they're being displayed in the headline. And these all talk about jobs in different lights. And after neutral, we see fear, and then we see joy. And this also agrees with what we got from our text blog analysis.
Right. So now we've seen sentiments, we've seen subjectivity. Then we now want to go a step deeper to look at context, because text blog may be good, but large language models can look at much more context and understand context. So we started with Coherent R+ and Llama 3.2, and we gave it a simple, a pretty basic prompt to look at these 10,000 headlines and then say, is it dystopian or utopian? Now we used a few short prompting because we gave it some examples of the particular headlines as a form of guide. And then looking at the results, we tried to compare both the two LLMs, and we saw that with Coherent, it had more utopian classes than the Llama. That alone gives us an idea on, we've seen that these two large language models kind of think differently, even though they agree on the majority, but they think slightly differently as well. So we picked out a few examples of where they agreed and where they disagreed. For instance, looking at the last example here that says fact check AI images instead of real Beirut airport attack. Now Coherent classified that as dystopian, probably because it saw it as a deceptive use of AI, but Llama said it's utopian, probably seeing it as a powerful feature of using AI. And then we now asked, does a positively classified headline from text blog, does it always mean utopian? And then we did this analysis, and we are looking at the confusion metrics to see that, for example, the green box here says, there are 209 articles that got the negative classification utopian classes from Coherent, but were classified as dystopian. At the same time, the other 164 as well, also the neutral, utopian, and utopia. So we've seen, positive, dystopian, and utopia. So we are saying that although TechBug might say it's positive, but these large language models understand more context are saying they are not actually utopian, but they can be dystopian. Now we did, we looked at this, but we'll look at this much more better as we go along. Then we now said who are the media houses or the players that are shaping the narrative in the minds of people. We used the results from Llama to see the sources, and we saw that the majority of the utopian articles are coming from Nature.com and Forbes, and then on the flip side, we have The Guardian and Reuters as expected. And then we now brought in DeepSeek as well. Now, the reason why we brought in DeepSeek is DeepSeek has the capability of doing chain of thought reasoning. So it cannot just do, it doesn't just do articles classification, it also provides an explanation as well to why it's giving those classes to those headlines. And then we designed a prompt specially for DeepSeek, and we said, okay, do like 3 levels of analysis. First of all, take all the 10,000 headlines and classify them into the 5 focus areas that we have, which is academia, environment, social impact, and healthcare and career. And then now look at these individual focus areas and get the underlying theme across each of them. And then the final thing, take the headline, give us a classification, and then the explanation as to why you're doing that. And then we see, first of all, on the first layer, majority of the headlines are career-based, followed by social impact, and environment is the least talked about in the news headline. Then we also did the second results, which is we gave it a headline, for instance, and said, okay, AI threatens more than just creative jobs, it is undermining our humanity. What do you say about it? And they said it's dystopian, and then gave an explanation saying the headline suggests negative impact on humanity. Now all this is good, it's added transparency and trust, but then LLMs also hallucinate. So how do we trust the classification that it is giving us? So we wanted to do some form of validation, and then we use Facebook AI similarity search.
So in here it says it's a semantic similarity tool which we're able to query the database, and we're able to get semantic similar headlines from the database and then compare if they coincide or align with the classification and explanation that DeepSeek provided through its reasoning. Because the question we had was, although we do have this reasoning and explanation from DeepSeek, how much can we trust it? So we queried it with, we created the AI similarity search with AI threatens job security, and we picked out the top 10 most connected headlines, similar headlines, and DeepSeek classified 8 of those headlines as dystopian and the other 2 as neutral. And we see an example of one of the dystopian one here, and it's all the 8 of the dystopian classified titles were, pointing out opinions, while the neutral ones that were classified as neutral by DeepSeek were giving suggestions and asking questions, and that aligned with the explanation. So we were able to verify that DeepSeek reasoning was consistent overboard and along all its classification and explanation, and it was not random. So FAIS has helped us to confirm DeepSeek's logic by using a human search interface. So in conclusion, is AI utopian or dystopian? We wanted to answer this question using our now validated classification by DeepSeek and focusing on these areas that we highlighted here. So we see in career and environment, we have over 50% of utopian classification, and we have neutral being 30% and lower. So that also shows like there's an optimistic view in those 2 categories. In healthcare and academia, we see above 35% of neutral, but we also see a very large amount of utopian. So that also shows optimism, but still caution. And social impact, very interesting. We had neutral being above 35% as well, and being the leading classification here, with neutral close, with dystopian trending closer behind utopian. So, is AI utopian or dystopian? We say that it is utopian, but it is measurably so. We're still looking at those risks. We're still looking at the threats that it could provide, but we're looking at it from a lens that is, utopian, and I think that's what really makes this AI conversation very valuable. So, yes, thank you.